I lost my job, my husband left, and my parents disowned me. Then my boss's wife called me and said something that changed everything. Stay with me till the end, because what happened next still feels unreal to this day. It all started on a rainy Tuesday morning in Charlotte. I remember sitting at my desk, sipping lukewarm coffee, buried in paperwork like any other day. I had been working at the firm for nearly 6 years, always early, always dependable. My boss, Mr. Lattimore, had even called me the backbone of the department once. So when I was called into his office that morning, I walked in thinking it might be about the new promotion I'd been promised. Instead, Cedric Lattimore barely looked up from his laptop. "Talia," he said, "we've discovered discrepancies in the project funds under your management. I'm afraid we have to let you go." For a moment, I couldn't speak. "Discrepancies? Sir, there must be some mistake. I handle every expense with full reports and receipts." He sighed and shook his head like he was tired of hearing excuses. Security was already waiting at the door. They handed me a brown box and asked me to pack my things. I remember my hands trembling as I placed my coffee mug inside. People avoided my eyes as I walked out. By the time I reached my car, tears blurred everything around me. When I got home, I thought I'd at least have Rashad to comfort me. He'd always been my safe place, or so I believed. But when I told him I'd lost my job, his face didn't show shock or sympathy. He just stared at the floor. "Talia," he said slowly, "there's something I need to tell you too." Those words hit harder than anything Cedric had said. He looked up, guilt clouding his eyes. "I've been seeing someone else. I didn't mean for it to happen, but I can't keep lying." I couldn't even process the words. "Someone else?" I whispered. "After everything I've done for us? After all these years?" He didn't answer. He just packed a bag, walked out, and left me standing in silence. I sank to the floor, shaking. Within hours, my life had unraveled completely. That night, I called my parents. My mother's voice was cold from the moment she picked up. "Your father and I heard what happened," she said. "Rashad told us everything. How could you steal from your company and push your husband away?" "Mom, that's not true." I cried. "I was framed. Please, you have to believe me." But she didn't. "You've embarrassed this family, Talia," she said and hung up. By the next morning, I was alone in an empty apartment, jobless, heartbroken, and disowned by the people I loved most. I sat on my bed staring at the wall, wondering how everything I'd built could vanish in just 2 days. I didn't know it then, but this fall, this heartbreak, was only the beginning of something far greater. The days after losing everything felt like walking through fog. I was still numb, trying to understand how my husband could cheat and how my boss could fire me without proof. But the real sting came when I learned the truth about who Rashad had been seeing. It happened by accident. I was at a grocery store, still wearing the same sweatshirt I'd been living in for days, when I overheard 2 women from my old office whispering near the produce section. "You heard about Cedric's wife and that Monroe guy?" one said, lowering her voice. "Messy. No wonder Talia got fired. The whole office was talking about it." At first, I thought I'd misheard. But when I stepped closer and heard Kendra Lattimore's name, my stomach twisted. Rashad's affair was with her, the wife of my boss. I nearly dropped the basket I was holding. It felt like someone had taken every piece of my shattered heart and ground it into dust. I went home shaking, replaying every strange thing that had happened in the weeks before I was fired. The late-night calls Rashad said were business. The way Cedric avoided eye contact toward the end. The way Kendra once smiled at me in the office, polite but knowing. It all made sense now. I wasn't fired because of disruption. I was fired because my husband and my boss's wife were having an affair, and Cedric wanted me out of the picture before the truth spread. The gossip traveled fast. My phone buzzed with texts from coworkers, some fake concerned, some bluntly curious. "We heard things got complicated at the office," one message read. "Cedric said you brought personal drama to work." Another said, "You okay?" People are saying Rashad and Kendra were close. I didn't reply to any of them. My reputation was ruined before I could defend myself. To everyone, I was the angry wife who couldn't handle her marriage and brought chaos to the workplace. Late that night, I sat in the dark scrolling through old photos, company dinners, charity events, office parties. There they were, Cedric and Kendra smiling side by side. And in the corner, Rashad laughing with them like nothing was wrong. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. Rashad had cheated with the one person who could destroy my career, and Cedric had made sure to bury me professionally to protect his perfect image. I thought about confronting them, but what would it change? They had power, money, and connections. All I had was my anger and the truth, and even that felt too small. That night, I cried until my throat burned. But somewhere between the tears, something hardened inside me. If they thought I was broken, they were wrong. I didn't know how yet, but I promised myself one thing: they would regret underestimating me. It was almost midnight when my phone started ringing. The number was unknown, and for a moment I thought it might be another debt collector or a wrong number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. The voice on the other end was shaky, soft, and familiar. "Talia, it's Kendra." My heart froze. For a second, I couldn't speak. The last person I expected to hear from was the woman my husband betrayed me with. I wanted to hang up, but something in her voice stopped me. She sounded scared, desperate even. "I know you don't owe me a thing," she whispered. "But please, I need to tell you what Cedric and Rashad did." I sat up in bed, the heaviness in my chest returning. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She hesitated before speaking again, her words coming out in small, trembling bursts. "Cedric, he framed you. You didn't mishandle those funds, he did. He took company money and made it look like you were responsible. And Rashad, he helped him do it." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My throat went dry as her words sank in. "Rashad helped?" I asked quietly. Kendra sniffled, clearly crying now. "Cedric paid him. He gave Rashad money to keep quiet and to help change the records. Rashad told him how you stored files, where you kept your reports. They forged your name on the transfers. I didn't know everything until I saw the documents myself. Cedric said it was just to protect the business, but it's so much worse than that." I felt sick. My husband, the man who had looked me in the eye and said he was sorry, had not only betrayed me with another woman but had helped destroy my career for money. "Why are you telling me this now?" I finally asked. Kendra took a shaky breath. "Because I can't live with it anymore. Cedric is ruthless, Talia. He'll do anything to protect himself. But I found proof, bank statements, transfers, emails. I've been scared to come forward, but I can't keep covering for him. I thought you deserved to know the truth." I sat there in silence, tears sliding down my face, my fingers gripping the phone so tightly it hurt. My mind flashed back to the day I was fired, Cedric's calm expression, Rashad's lies, my parents' disbelief. Everything made sense now. Every piece fit together like a cruel puzzle I hadn't been able to see. Kendra's voice broke through my thoughts. "I'm sorry, Talia. I never meant for any of this to happen. I'll help you if I can, but you have to be careful." When the call ended, I just sat there staring into the dark. The truth had finally surfaced, uglier and deeper than I ever imagined. My world had already fallen apart, but now I realized it hadn't been an accident. It was planned. And that night, I knew one thing for sure: I was done being their victim. The next evening, I drove out to a small diner just off the highway, the kind of place where truckers stopped for coffee and pie at midnight. Kendra had chosen it because it was quiet, far enough from the city that no one would recognize us. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel the entire drive there. I didn't know if I was ready to face her, or the truth that waited. When I walked in, she was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a hood pulled over her hair. She looked nothing like the confident, polished woman I used to see at company events. Her eyes were red, her makeup gone. When she saw me, she gave a small, nervous wave. "Thanks for coming," she said quietly. I sat down, my heart racing. "You said you had proof." She nodded and slid a small envelope across the table. "Everything's in there, copies of the bank transfers, the fake invoices, and Cedric's emails to Rashad. He made it look like you approved every transaction." I opened the envelope with shaky hands. Inside were printed bank statements with Cedric's signature, and mine, forged perfectly beside it. I recognized my initials on project documents, but the numbers were wrong. The dates didn't match. My stomach twisted. "This can't be real," I whispered. "It's real," Kendra said, her voice cracking. I found the originals on Cedric's computer. He moved the money into his personal account, then shifted it through fake vendors so no one would trace it. Rashad knew. He even helped rename the files so they looked like legitimate expenses. I stared at her, fighting the anger building inside me. So he took my job, my name, and my life, just to save himself? She looked down. "Cedric told me it was business, that no one would get hurt. But when I saw what he did to you, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't look at myself. The waitress walked by with a pot of coffee, but we both shook our heads. The air felt heavy between us. Kendra leaned closer. I know you have every reason to hate me. But Cedric's dangerous, Talia. He controls everything, the company, the people, even me. If he finds out I told you, I don't know what he'll do. For a moment, I saw the fear in her eyes. She wasn't the enemy anymore. She was another one of Cedric's victims, just trapped in a prettier cage. I pulled out my phone and started taking photos of every page. If he thinks he can destroy me and walk away clean, I said, my voice steady now, he's wrong. Kendra reached out and touched my hand. Be careful, she whispered. I nodded, slipping the photos into a hidden folder on my phone. As I walked out of that diner into the cool night air, something shifted inside me. For the first time since everything fell apart, I had proof, and with it power. I wasn't broken anymore. I was ready. The weeks after meeting Kendra felt like stepping into a new world. One I didn't recognize yet, but was determined to survive in. I rented a small studio apartment on the edge of Charlotte, nothing fancy, just a place with 4 walls where no one knew my name. The paint was chipped, the windows rattled when it rained, but it was mine. It was quiet. It was safe. To make ends meet, I got a job at a little cafe downtown. The pay wasn't much, but the steady rhythm of brewing coffee and wiping tables helped me think. Each morning, I'd tie on my apron, smile at strangers, and pretend everything was normal. But behind that smile, my mind was constantly working, building a plan piece by piece. That's when I met Miles Garner. He was a local attorney who came into the cafe often, always ordering a black coffee and reading case files at the corner table. One day, when he left his business card behind, I took it as a sign. I called him that evening, explaining everything, the firing, the forged documents, the call from Kendra. I expected disbelief, maybe pity. But instead, he listened. Bring me what you have, he said firmly. If you're telling the truth, we can build a case. The next day, I sat across from him in his small office surrounded by piles of legal folders. My hands shook as I handed over the photos I'd taken at the diner. He studied each one, his brow furrowing deeper with every page. This is solid evidence, he finally said. Cedric's in deep. And if Rashad helped him, we can prove conspiracy. But we'll need more, original files, digital trails, witnesses. It'll take time. I have time, I said quietly. I've already lost everything else. From that day, Miles became my ally. He wasn't the comforting type, but he was determined. He taught me how to document every message, every trace of Cedric's wrongdoing. For the first time, I felt like I had control again. Then, out of nowhere, Rashad showed up. It was a Sunday morning. I was unlocking the cafe when he walked in, holding a coffee cup like nothing had happened. Talia, he said softly, you look different. I've been thinking about you. I didn't even turn fully toward him. You should have thought about me before you sold me out. He tried to reach for my hand, but I stepped back. It wasn't like that, he said quickly. Cedric made me, I was scared. I regret everything. I looked at him for a long second, searching for the man I used to love. But all I saw was weakness. You regret getting caught, I said. Not what you did. The night of the investor dinner felt like the perfect stage. Cedric had spent weeks polishing his pitch, inviting the right people, and making sure the room would be full of powerful faces ready to sign on the dotted line. He thought everything was secure. He didn't know the storm was already moving inside his own house. I had planned this for weeks with Miles and Kendra. Kendra still worked inside Cedric's world, and she used that access like a quiet knife. She copied spreadsheets, saved email chains, and took screenshots of transfers that should never have existed. We traced each move the money made, the shell companies, the altered invoices, the backdated approvals. Every trail eventually led to Cedric's signature. It felt small and huge at the same time. Small because it was all paperwork, huge because it was the proof that would pull the rug out from under him. Miles worked fast. He filed an urgent disclosure with a regulator and secured a temporary injunction that would freeze key accounts the moment the evidence was submitted. He also prepared a set of documents for the investors, a clear timeline, annotated bank statements, and copies of the forged contracts. We packaged the proof so even a non-lawyer could follow the trail from Cedric's office to his personal account. On the day of the dinner, I wore a simple dress and kept my voice low. I wasn't going to be dramatic. My goal was to be precise and undeniable. Kendra sent an anonymous email to several attendees with a link labeled Urgent Due Diligence. The link led to the documents Miles had prepared. It also triggered the regulator's review because Miles had already filed a notice that a whistleblower would be coming forward with supporting evidence that night. At the same time, we made sure Rashad couldn't slide away. Miles had filed a motion naming Rashad as a material witness with evidence of conspiracy, and a subpoena was delivered to his apartment that afternoon. He received it just before the dinner, and he couldn't avoid being reached by investigators. We also leaked a small portion of the evidence to a trusted journalist who had covered corporate fraud before. The reporter promised to be at the dinner and bring attention if the investors tried to ignore the material. Inside the banquet hall, chandeliers glowed and waiters moved like clockwork. Cedric stood to speak, confident and smooth. He had no idea half the room already had the file open on their phones. I watched him scan the crowd, feeling a cold clarity. When the Regulators' Council arrived with police quietly at his back, murmurs began to ripple like wind through the tent. Phones lit up. Investors who had been moments from signing contracts were now reading transfers that bore Cedric's handwriting. Rashad sat at a table near the back, face pale, unable to meet anyone's eyes. When an investigator asked him to stand aside for questioning, his hands trembled. Cedric's confident smile broke into something raw and panicked as a partner confronted him with an invoice and a transfer to a personal account. Kendra stood in the doorway, shaking but steady, having finally chosen the right side. It was not a fight with raised voices or public spectacle. It was a surgical cut, precision and proof. As people left the hall in stunned clusters, I felt both hollow and fierce. The trap had worked. The people who built the lie were being pulled into the light, and for the first time in months, I could breathe because justice was no longer just a plan. It was happening. Then I walked past him and locked the door behind me. That night, as I sat on the floor of my apartment surrounded by files and notes, I realized something. I wasn't just fighting back. I was planning a war, and this time I had nothing left to lose. The moment I stepped into the investor dinner, every head turned. The air inside the ballroom was polished and expensive, crystal chandeliers, a jazz trio playing softly, waiters gliding between tables with champagne. Cedric stood near the stage, laughing with a cluster of investors like the king of his own empire. But when his eyes landed on me, that easy smile faltered for the first time. I walked in wearing a calm I didn't feel, clutching a small folder in my hand. Miles had told me not to confront him personally, that the evidence would speak for itself. But I needed to be there. I needed them all to see me, not as the woman he ruined, but as the woman who was about to expose him. "Talia," Cedric said stiffly, stepping toward me, his voice low but tight. "You're not supposed to be here." "Relax," I said, my voice steady. "I just came to return something that belongs to you." The room quieted. Some of the investors looked uncomfortable, sensing tension. I placed the folder on the nearest table and opened it slowly, revealing a stack of printed documents. "These," I said clearly, "are the real numbers from the company's project accounts, including the transfers that went missing under your management, Cedric. And the forged approvals you claimed I signed." He tried to laugh it off. "That's ridiculous. She's a disgruntled former employee." But before he could finish, Kendra appeared from the side entrance. She looked pale but determined, a tablet in her hand. "She's not lying," Kendra said. "Cedric, it's over. I've already shared the originals with the firm's board and the investors." A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. Cedric's face drained of color. He turned sharply toward her. "You don't know what you're talking about, Kendra. You've always been emotional." "Enough," she said, cutting him off. "You stole from the company and let everyone think she was guilty. I watched you ruin her life to protect yourself." I tapped the documents, sliding them toward one of the firm's senior partners. "Here are the signatures, emails, and bank transfers. You'll see my name forged beside his. You'll also find the transactions leading directly to his private account." The partners exchanged looks, whispering rapidly. Cedric's mask cracked completely then, his polished charm gone, replaced by panic. And then there was Rashad. He stood near the back, shifting from foot to foot, face pale as everyone's eyes turned toward him. "Talia, please," he stammered. "I didn't know what Cedric was planning." "Save it," I said coldly. "You knew exactly what you were doing when you took his money." Kendra handed over her tablet to the lead investor. "Every message, every transfer, every file, it's all there," she said. The room was silent except for the soft buzz of voices confirming the evidence. One of the partners finally turned to Cedric and said firmly, "You're suspended, effective immediately." Cedric's jaw clenched. Rashad looked like he wanted to disappear. I gathered my folder, looked at both of them one last time, and said, "You built your success on lies. Now you get to watch them collapse." Then I turned and walked out, the weight of their silence following me all the way to the door. For the first time in a long while, my head was high, not because I'd destroyed them, but because I'd finally reclaimed myself. The days after the confrontation felt strangely quiet, like the world was holding its breath. Then everything began to unravel, fast. News broke within 48 hours that Cedric's firm was under a full federal investigation for financial misconduct. Reporters crowded outside the company building, cameras flashing as Cedric tried to slip past without answering questions. His polished image as a respected businessman vanished overnight. Investors pulled their money, clients backed out of contracts, and the firm that once seemed untouchable began to crumble from the inside. Miles kept me updated on everything. "They froze his accounts," he told me over the phone. "Once the auditors traced the money, it was over." "You did it, Talia." It didn't feel like victory, at least not the kind I imagined. It was quieter, heavier. But there was peace in knowing the truth had finally come to light. Rashad's downfall came right after. When the investigators discovered his involvement in falsifying records, his company terminated him immediately. His name spread across social media and news outlets. The husband who helped frame his own wife. He tried calling me, leaving voicemails full of apologies and excuses. "I didn't know it would go this far," he said in one. "I just made a mistake, Talia. Please talk to me." I deleted them all without listening to the end. Kendra filed for divorce a week later. She sent me a short message, thanking me for giving her the courage to walk away. She said Cedric had been controlling for years, and that the truth finally set her free. I believed her. In a strange way, she'd helped me find freedom too. Then, one afternoon, my parents showed up at my apartment. I hadn't spoken to them since the night they hung up on me. My mother stood at the door holding a pie like it could fix everything. My father's eyes were red, and he looked smaller somehow, like guilt had carved pieces out of him. "Talia," my mother said softly, "we saw the news. We know now you were telling the truth. We're so sorry." I let them in, mostly out of courtesy. We sat at my tiny kitchen table, the same one where I had once cried alone, wondering why my own family didn't believe me. My father cleared his throat. "We should have stood by you. We shouldn't have believed Rashad. Can you forgive us?" I looked at them both for a long time before answering. "I'm not angry anymore," I said quietly. "But what hurt me most wasn't Cedric or Rashad, it was you. You were supposed to protect me. Instead, you turned your backs when I needed you most." My mother's eyes filled with tears. I stood, walked them to the door, and added, "I forgive you, but I don't need your approval anymore." When the door closed behind them, I felt something lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I wasn't chasing anyone's understanding. I had my truth, and that was enough. The courtroom was cold and quiet, the kind of silence that made every whisper sound sharp. I sat on the witness stand, hands folded, eyes steady on the lawyer who asked the questions. Months of fear, anger, and exhaustion had led to this moment. Cedric sat at the defense table, his once smooth confidence gone. Rashad sat beside him, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. They barely glanced at each other. Miles stood tall beside me, his voice calm but firm as he guided me through my testimony. "Ms. Monroe," he said, "can you explain, in your own words, how you discovered the financial fraud at the company?" I took a breath. "I was fired under false accusations of fund mishandling," I said evenly. Later, evidence surfaced showing Cedric Lattimore had forged documents and falsified transfers under my name. Rashad Monroe, my then-husband, assisted by providing access to company files and receiving payments in exchange for his silence. The opposing attorney tried to rattle me, throwing questions meant to twist the story. But I didn't flinch. Miles had prepared me for every angle, every trap. I kept my tone calm, clear, and factual. For once, I wasn't defending myself out of desperation. I was standing in truth. When the financial expert took the stand to confirm the forged signatures and fraudulent accounts, Cedric's lawyer's arguments began to crumble. The evidence Miles and Kendra had gathered was airtight. Every paper trail, every email, every transaction linked back to Cedric's authorization. Rashad's name appeared throughout the correspondence as a facilitator. Kendra testified next. She walked in dressed simply, no jewelry, no trace of her former high society image. Her voice shook at first, but she grew steadier as she spoke. I was part of the deception by staying silent, she said, glancing at me. But Talia showed me what courage looks like. I wouldn't have come forward if not for her. Her words caught me off guard. For so long, I had seen Kendra as part of my pain. Hearing her speak the truth out loud brought an unexpected sense of closure. After days of testimony, the verdict came quickly. Cedric was found guilty of fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. Rashad was convicted of conspiracy and aiding in falsified documentation. Both were sentenced, their reputations shattered beyond repair. When the judge finally said the words, "Ms. Monroe is hereby cleared of all allegations," I felt my chest tighten, then release. It was over. My name was clean again. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions, flashes went off, but I didn't stop. Miles stood beside me, smiling slightly. "You handled yourself perfectly," he said. I smiled back. "You helped me believe I could." Weeks later, I received a call from a local design firm offering me a position as a senior project coordinator. I hesitated for a moment, not out of fear, but to remind myself that this time, I would do things differently. I accepted, not because I needed to prove anything, but because I was finally free to build again, this time on my own terms. The morning sun spilled through the wide glass windows of Talia's new office, casting soft golden light across the polished desk. She stood still for a moment, her reflection faintly visible against the skyline of Charlotte. The city looked different now, not louder or brighter, but somehow more open, like it finally had room for her again. It had been 6 months since the court case. Life had moved quietly after that, no dramatic turns, no chaos, just peace. She had spent those months healing, resting, and learning how to breathe again without fear of what might fall apart next. When the call came from a new construction firm, offering her a senior project coordinator position, she almost didn't answer. The number was unfamiliar, and part of her still associated unfamiliarity with trouble. But when she picked up, the woman on the other end said, "Ms. Monroe, we've heard great things about your professionalism and integrity. We'd love for you to join our leadership team." Talia was silent for a second. Her chest tightened, not from nerves, but from disbelief that she was being recognized for her worth again, without anyone else's shadow hanging over her. She smiled softly and said, "I'd be honored." Now, standing in that new office, she could hear the faint hum of the city below, cars, voices, life moving forward. The walls were still bare, her desk empty except for a cup of coffee and a small framed quote she had bought months ago. "Sometimes peace is the loudest victory." Her phone buzzed once, breaking the quiet. She reached for it, expecting a message from her new assistant or maybe a welcome note from HR. But when she looked at the screen, her breath caught. It was a voicemail from Rashad. She hadn't heard his voice in months. Her heart didn't race anymore. There was no anger left, just a distant ache that felt like it belonged to another life. Slowly, she pressed play. "Hey, Talia," his voice was low, uncertain. "I don't even know where to start. I'm sorry for everything. I ruined the best thing I ever had. Please, just talk to me once. You don't have to forgive me, I just..." She stopped the message before he could finish. For a moment, she stared at the phone in silence. Then, with a calm she never thought she'd feel again, she deleted it. No hesitation. No tears. It wasn't that she hated him. She simply didn't need to hear him anymore. She had carried enough noise, enough heartbreak, enough explanations that never healed. Now she wanted quiet. She turned back to the window, sipping her coffee as the morning light grew stronger. Below, people hurried through their routines, chasing dreams, mending lives, just as she had. For the first time in a long time, Talia smiled. Not because she won, but because she was free. Her peace didn't come from revenge. It came from letting go. And as the city buzzed beneath her, she finally felt she belonged to herself again. Do you think Talia made the right choice by deleting Rashad's message and walking away for good? Or should she have given him one last chance to explain himself? Share your thoughts down below. I'd really love to hear what you think. And if you enjoy powerful stories like this, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next one.